Right.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well, thanks.
It's a great day. Cannot wait to be out.
Yeah. How's it? How it's like outdoor?
Yeah. I mean, I've honestly been like just stuck in my studio for pretty much all week editing projects and whatnot, and uh, creating new material for myself as well. So I want to enjoy the 1 week of summer that we get in Canada.
Right. Right on, right on. Cool. So,
Right on.
pretty much what we're going to do is just I'm going to click go live here momentarily.
Yeah,
Then I'm just going to kind of dive into a little background, how you and I met really quickly. Let you give a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll dive into the topics that we kind of discussed, and I'll kind of throw you a few questions here and there to elaborate on things that I think will be valuable to the audience, and we'll just kind of keep it an organic flow.
sure. Sounds great.
Right on. So. All righty. Excellent to be here again for another PDOCS Livestream Series. This is the week of the month, the other week, right? I do these every other week, and I always stumble when I talk about this. But this is where we have a guest speaker on, and we got somebody kind of unique today. In terms of, I've never had anybody on as a guest speaker with this kind of background, skill set, and how it transitions to digital business. Our audience, myself, and everything included. So I'm kind of psyched about that aspect. Lefty, as you guys saw, anybody that saw the posts all week, he's a filmmaker, cinematographer, best feature film 2023, best cinematographer 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and Lefty, you and I just got in contact here in the last couple of months. I think organically, I commented on a post, and you're like, "Hey, I'd like to hear more of your story," something like that. And then you DM me or vice versa, and we kind of connected from there. So if you would just talk a little about how we got connected really quickly, and then elaborate on your background and kind of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what it was. I'm always looking, and I'm always kind of on the hunt for stories, for great stories. Everybody has one. Everybody should not hold them hostage. They're there for us to share. And that's kind of what I was looking for. You did comment on one of my posts, and super intriguing. And then we kind of got to chatting, and then pretty much we're here where we are right now. And the background of what I do is essentially I help entrepreneurs become celebrities in their respective industries.
Awesome, awesome. And what you talked about there very briefly is kind of what got this whole concept rolling for today is stories, right?
Mm.
Storytelling, yourself in particular, documentary, video, film content, and as we all know, right, video content is king. If you're not utilizing it, if you're not utilizing it well, you're probably way behind your competition in the pack. But it's used in so many different ways. You told me about for some of your clients, like you do larger projects, longer films, documentaries. You also create quick little short stories for people. And I think you said one of your clients off a handful of short stories made about $100,000 in sales. But talk about like the different aspects of stories and the different types of projects that you do.
Yeah, so typically I dabble in the world of documentaries, short films, and feature films. Uh, Documentaries they can have a running time of anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, and they can, go as long as a regular 90-minute feature. And of course, the more popular ones, which take about a year and a half to produce, or longer, that's when you get into like your docu series, right? Now, I personally haven't had an opportunity to film a docu series because that would literally require me to drop every client that I have and just focus on one specific individual. But I think that's a cool thing too, because you really get to know someone's business that way. And I feel like, to kind of just touch on that a little bit, is we're so keen to try new things, and the whole shiny object syndrome. And then one person sees one filmmaker and then another filmmaker, and then we constantly jump ship to the next person. But you don't really get to build a brand that way, and you don't really get to you know allow that individual to get to know your process, your story, your business. And I think that's another reason why I gravitate towards these longer projects, because how can anybody, build your brand or your business or even help you make money if you're going to do a project for them, you're going to turn it around in 7 days, and then you wait for that person to knock on your door again, right? The minimum requirement, I guess, that I've seen on the projects that I do have been like 3 4 months, and that's just working on one project, and that really allows me to really hone in on asking the right questions and crafting a narrative that is going to make an impact for literally decades.
That's the awesome thing about film or any type of imagery. I mean, I guess it could even be still photography and art, but it makes an impact for generations down the line.
Mm.
And it's cool. People do now, like they'll go back and watch footage from something that happened 100 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are going to still be doing that 100 years from now, right? They're just going to have a lot more to choose from than we do right now from 100 years ago.
Right.
Um, how about talk a little about some of the projects that you have done that, maybe some of the ones that you got featured in, of some of your more, established ones.
Yeah, the one major one that I did was last summer. We started the project around it was like, yeah, it was about June. We started the project. We had a release date for September. We did a Cineplex release, so that was my first theater release. It was my second feature film at the time. So I thought that was really cool. And that's actually the one that I won the awards for. I won best cinematography, best feature film, and best trailer for the film. The individual that I did it for, um, you guys can definitely still go watch it. It is on video on demand, so it is a rental film. But the trailer is up, for free on my YouTube channel that I believe redirects you to that film. But yeah, I know it was a really cool process. We brought in so many different cameos, people that were literally involved in this person's life from like all stages. Some the beginning, majority of them in the middle, some of them closer to the end. And when I say end, it's just because
Current.
they're there where they are current right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool to like not only hear his perspective, but hear everybody else speak about him in their own words and how they felt about him at the time. So yeah, it's a really interesting process when you get into that.
And what is a budget for something like that?
Though, it's really interesting, right? Because and I get this question all the time because um it's funny to say because it really just depends on the scope of the work, essentially, right? Like you have you have like a company like Coca-Cola, for example, who is just going to create a 30-second commercial, but the budget could be $10 million, right? But then you can also have a quick one location, uh, one actor or one subject, 48-hour type film where it's a small crew, small everything, and you can get that in and around the 10 to 20K range. But that film, I believe the budget for that film was around the 35 to 40K mark.
So still pretty cheap, especially in those standards. And congratulations, first theater release. That's got to be a cool thing,
It
personally.
was, yeah.
And yeah, I saw some of your YouTube videos, and you got a lot of great stuff up there. So anybody watching here on Zoom or on the Facebook Live or the replay, I will drop Lefty's YouTube channel down below in the comments, and it'll be in the description on my YouTube video. So everybody go check out his stuff. A lot better production value than what I put out there. I just try to bring good information, but I'm definitely lacking on the aesthetics and production side of things when it comes to my content. I'm kind of catching up there. I've always been like that though in business. Like everyone's like, you care how your logo and this. I'm like, not really. I just care how good my product is, and how much my clients like it. Like I'll worry about that stuff after. Like I always worry about just the information.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, it's image at the end of the day, right? Like and that's your brand. Like if your brand calls for something that uh is just your typical average lower budget production type quality, then and that's what people come to you for. That's what they want to see, right? Because if you were to do the same thing and then switch it, everyone's going to be like, whoa, whoa, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
It's too much, it's too flashy, right? And then vice versa. You do large high-end productions and then you go down to, let's say, your your webcam or your phone quality or anything, and now people are like, oh, did something happen? Did that person go bankrupt or something? Right? So it's really like how you want to position yourself in the
Totally it
marketplace.
is.
And that's why, I love when I get into these types of calls, especially when I'm like speaking to like a brand new prospect, is because it really just boils down to, like, if you forget the investment, if you forget like how long it's going to take, or what it entails to do it, the root of everything is just, how do you want to show up? Because that's really what matters. That's the bread, the meat of it all, right?
Yeah, the
And
end
that's
result or
kind
the
of where I
outcome, right?
start. Yeah.
Yeah, great, great. So what I'd like you to talk a little more about, and what can maybe transfer to people watching and something they can implement, is what can you tell people about storytelling that, people may not know, or people just are missing when they try to tell their story? Is there any kind of good little tips, maybe a framework, anything along those lines? And as I mentioned earlier when I talked about the post, and when you and I first talked, and you told me that was kind of like one of your areas of expertise, or what you really do, right, is storytelling, whether it's your own, whether it's other people's. And I had told you about 4 or 5 years ago, I came across a guy, John Romaniello, who's kind of, his whole thing is storytelling. And I kind of dived down that loophole, and I realized how stuff I read 4 or 5 years ago, it just kind of embedded in me, and it's like I still use it to this day.
Yeah. No, I mean, storytelling is always gonna, it doesn't really change that much from like decade to decade, right? It more or less is the same. Like at the root of it all, it's the hero's journey, right? But it's how you tell that hero's journey, that's where we get, just sucked into what it is that we're watching. Um, I would say the one thing that was kind of not drilled into my head, but something that like stood out to me from when I really started researching storytelling, is a lot of people have a topic, they don't have a story. And
Mm,
people get that confused. They think a topic is not a story. And I'll give you an example of that. I want to do a film on the Marriott hotels. Okay. What about it? Right? So I have my topic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have my story. If you want to go deeper into that, well, what about the Marriott? Is it the culture? Is it the employees? Is it the management? Is it the clientele? Is it the events that happen within the grounds? Is it literally just down, or are we talking about the lower level, employees that are just, maintaining the property, right? There's so many avenues that you can go that can give you so many great stories when it comes to the Marriott hotel. But the Marriott in itself is just the topic. And I feel like there's a lot of people that they don't articulate their stories well, because they'll show up and they'll just be like, hi, I'm Lefty. Okay. Right. So just kind of pause, think about that for a second, and really try and rip the two apart, because they are not one and the same. And then when you can kind of do that, you're going to start seeing your content kind of, get better. And if it's honestly, and if it's something that you're just like are not good at, like, that's okay. There's a reason why, people like myself and others exist. Like, we're here to help, to make sure that you are getting what you want out of it in the end.
Great. Right. So yeah, that's very a good point to make. I think you're right, and I see people do that. They have a topic to talk about, and they try to, but it's not intriguing. It's not sucking you in. It's not making them stand out, right? And those are the things. So what kind of goes into a good story? I think you're right. Storytelling doesn't really change, so to speak, decade to decade. Everybody's story is different, but like how to tell a good story, I think there's a certain, few key elements. I'd like to hear your take on that. Like, what goes into just a good story, generally speaking.
Yeah. And this is a funny one. I feel like I feel like I answer this question like amongst like my peers and my colleagues, but I think this is gonna be like, an exclusive answer for this show right now. Um, a lot of people look at somebody who can hold a camera as just a videographer. And yes, there are people out there that are literally just videographers. Now, the videographer's job is to point and shoot, but it's the direction that's coming from you. You have to tell them what to do, as opposed to someone um, in my field. I'm a film director and a producer, right? So instead of you telling me what to do, I'm kind of telling you what to do. So in that regards, it's about picking your director very wisely. It's not about getting the cheapest product. It's not about working with the best camera gear or the best, locations or whatever the case might be. It's about understanding who's going to direct your project. You cannot, and the best example that I like to use is, imagine if Martin Scorsese directed Avatar, and then imagine if James Cameron directed Goodfellas. We would have two very different movies, and they would not be good because that's not their zone of genius. There's a reason why Scorsese directs the films that he does, and there's a reason why James Cameron directs the films that he does. So if you want to really put together any sort of film, and and when I say film, I'm not talking, the daily content that you can produce yourself, the shorts and all that jazz, like a true film. If you feel like you are in that part of your life, that part of your business where you're like, yeah, I think I'm ready to level up. It's not about choosing the cinematographer, it's about choosing the director. And the right director will make your story $1 million story.
That's a lot of information I didn't know, for one, but that's super valuable. So now that kind of made my mind wonder when you were, put the director with the opposite film, and just to imagine how much different it would be. And I don't even know if you can really fathom it, because it's night and day.
Yeah.
But from outside of that, from like outside of the director's standpoint, both of those stories are really good no matter what. Now, the director made them great, but like they were written prior to that, right? There was a script, or so, like, Goodfellas is a great example, or things like that. um what I was looking for from your perspective when you're helping tell somebody's story, what's kind of like the structure that makes it more compelling than somebody telling it themselves, right? Like, how do you stand out doing that?
Yeah, well, I think because, we're always trying to humble ourselves. We're always trying to be the best version of ourselves. And for someone like myself, I care about the raw you. I don't care about the humbled, prim and proper version that you showcase on the internet, right? Like, I've had clients literally break down and cry on camera just because I ask the right questions at the right time. It's more so from it's more so from like an audience perspective of like, I want to know you, but I want to know you not on a surface level. I want to really know like your dreams, your nightmares, like what makes you tick, what like anything and everything that I can pull from you is where the magic happens, really, within that hero's journey that I am going to be telling.
That's great. So what I would take away from that is, and these are some things that a couple of things definitely that I try to do and pride myself on, and a lot of people I know it doesn't come natural to, or they just don't feel like it's them. But like one thing that I have in my core values and that I do, and there's pros and cons to this. Don't get me wrong. Being unfiltered. So for better or worse, I think that's a good quality, and I think it helps when you're trying to portray that genuineness and authenticity that a lot of people try to portray everything that's good, right? Like you see the social media, like Lefty was saying, the social media, the Instagram you, but that's not really you. Like for a lot of people, with me,
Yeah.
I try to bring the same me to and I don't think a lot of people have trouble doing that because they're blinded by what they're seeing everywhere. They
Mhm.
got to always be smiling and looking happy and showing their wins, but nobody's talking about the losses or the times they're down. Another
Yeah.
thing is being willing to be vulnerable in your story, and especially when you're doing it on film. And again, Lefty is more his perspective is going to be more from that film director and long form, but that is still relevant even when you're making short content. Everything I'm talking about with authenticity,
Yeah.
unfiltered, vulnerable, and have something of substance there too. That's what really hooks. So like once you get that intrigue, then you got to have something of substance there. So when you're starting to create a story, so a tip I would give people is just really make sure that you have the main objective of what you want the story to do and what do you want for the outcome of the reader by the time they get to the end of it. And that will help you kind of shape how you're going to start that and tell that. And one quick little formula I've always kind of used is I just start with like where I was. Like so when people ask me a really quick story, and I'll go through my formula and then just kind of break it down. And Lefty, I'd like your insights or tweaks or things you can
Sure.
kind of elaborate on. But when I tell people my story, especially like relevant to what I do now in business, people like, hey, how did you get to where you are? Right. So I just really quickly, hey, man, I spent 20 years working in corporate in America in a kind of obscure niche, industrial laundry. I worked for some, multi-million, billion-dollar corporations, and I spent 20 years in a service and sales hybrid role. So I was out on the road, but I was also making
Mhm.
sales. Then in my late 30s, that job had repetitive bending and lifting over 100 times per shift. And I also have a fractured vertebrae from a car accident. So long story short, in my late 30s, I find out that I'm having really, real bad back problems. And I see a specialist. He tells me if I keep doing the type of work I'm going to be doing, by the time I'm 55, I'll be walking like a hunchback, right? So that's kind of where I have my epiphany. And I'm like, well, I'm 37, right? Like there's no price. I can't go buy a new back. Once my back's shot, there's no go buy a new one, right? So like
Right.
that's what opened my mind and finally got me out. That's my biggest regret in life is that it took me 20 years to realize entrepreneurship was an option, right? But
Mhm.
once I got that news, for about 18 months I grinded. I did my full-time 40 15-hour week job, started diving into digital marketing. This was my new avenue, right? Once I bought in, I bought the books, I took the courses, I hired a business coach before I ever launched an offer, and just got all my ducks in a row. And once I really felt confident that I could go out there and provide value to the market, I still remember the day, November 15th, 2019. I left that corporate job and started going into digital marketing. I started on a large sales team for a digital consultancy doing about 20 million a year. And within 6 months, I had enough foundation from what I'd learned and then what I'd learned doing it, implementing it 8 hours a day that I went and started my own thing. And that's led to 3 companies. And just recently, we got our newest 2 Comma Club award. We've had all kinds of revenue goals, team members, businesses. So, but again, that's kind of my thing. I start with something like relatable, my corporate job, then my hurdle. We all have an obstacle. For me, it was back problems, right? Your obstacle is going to be different, but you
Right.
show how you overcame that obstacle. Then you show you on the other side. Then when I take it one layer deeper, then I show how I help other people do it. So like when people hear my story, they're not like, oh, Ray's the exception, right? He overcame all that. No, I helped Ted, Justin, and Bobby do it too. Like anybody can do this. So that's
Mhm.
kind of my framework when I start thinking. Of course, I elaborate. That's a quick summation. I'd like your thoughts, though, or things you'd like to, add to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's never anything wrong with, George Lucasing the process. They're just completely Star Wars them. Start from the end, give them the end, and then work your way backwards. Like in any story that I do too, it's kind of like, what is the end result? But for me, it's a little different because there's different things that I have to think about. After the film is done, there's obviously a distribution process, right? So, and this is funny because this has happened to me before, where I've shot a film for a client, and I think it had a running time of like 11 and a half minutes. And this person came back to me like I think a month or two later, and he goes, "Hey Lefty, I think it would be really cool and great if maybe we can get this film on Netflix." And I'm just like, well, yeah, you should have told me that before we did an 11-minute film, right? There's like so for me, it's like I always look at distribution. What is what is the end goal of where do we want this thing to live? And mind you, just because you say, oh, I want Netflix, I want Prime Video, I want Hulu, I want whatever, those things take time. Like I could literally start an application process for you today, and then you might actually see it in the catalog like a year later or never, right? So, but it's always understanding that foundation first of where is this going to live, and then we start backwards. What is the goal of the film? Okay, then I can kind of, if I know what the end of the film is going to be, I know how the beginning of the film, how I want it to start. Um, and a lot of things I do too, as well, is not everybody has, like, especially for documentaries, they're very like they're very like emotional. They're very like not closed. That's not really the right word I'm using, but they're very um they're I have to be really like one with you at that time, and not everybody has, footage all the way through childhood. Some things happen, right? So the cool thing about how I tell stories forward or push stories forward in my documentaries, where it doesn't just end up being, someone sitting in a chair and, spilling their guts out for 35 minutes or an hour, is we do a lot of reenactments. So we use a lot of actors uh, at any stage of the person's life, whether it's childhood, whether it's teenage years, young adult. So we like I love creating movies at the end of the day, right? And
It
and
sounds
I want to
cool.
be able to showcase those people's lives in the best film possible.
It sounds so cool. It sounds so cool. Um, so that being said, when people like when you first led off and I had you introduce yourself, you're like, I help entrepreneurs become celebrities, right? By making films. So when is a good so how established are people that usually come to start working with you? Like if an entrepreneur, because I don't think you would ever be the first person to ever reach out to start to get, you know what I mean? They gotta get some
Mhm.
revenue and some sort of established level before they're going to go, spend money on a film or a documentary or a cinematographer, right? So like, when do people come to you, and then where does that take them next? Because I know a lot of what you do, and what we haven't really touched on, what you do also that we're about to get into, and what helps them is kind of the authority and the credibility you build as well. But
Yeah.
like, when does somebody come to work with you, and then what are they hoping? Where about are they at? Where do you help them get to?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because, in reality, you can come to me at any stage of your business, right? There's there's business owners that have, you know, a buttload of available credit like on their lines of credit, or or maybe they got a loan to start their businesses, or maybe they're in the same position as you, where they're winning 2 comma club awards, or they've hit their first, six figures. Like there I don't really steer anybody away
No,
when
I
it
get that.
comes
I
to.
just figured you had kind of like an ideal, an average, right? They're always going to have people more advanced or less advanced. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's more about the story than it is about where they are financially in their business, right? But in a nutshell, yeah, like typically they're in that 6 to 7 figure range, or they have a milestone that they want they're reaching now that needs to be documented, or it's their
Mm.
first time going to be sharing their story in a cinematic way. Um, but in the end, for me, it's the story, right? And that's another reason why I have an application process. It's not really so much about having a discovery call to sell my services. It's more so a discovery to sell the story, right? Because if I feel that there's something there that you know, I can't see working with, there's no point in wasting time and money and resources in order to get a film done, right? And that's
I
where I kind
agree.
of steer, and that's where I will steer somebody in that direction, right? And say, hey, maybe try this instead for now, and then let's come back at this afterwards if you feel like there's something there. So for me, it always stems down to the story. It's like, what do you got? Is it something that the people are going to want to watch? Is it going to be impactful? Is it something that is going to really bring people, to your business? Because there have been instances where it's like, yeah, uh, my story is I'm from this town. I woke up every morning. I went to school. I got a degree, and now I work and I'm starting a business, and I don't leave my house. Like I don't. That is a person that I'm gonna, probably say sorry, but unfortunately, I have to close the door, right?
Yeah.
Um,
What can you do with that?
but it's very rare that I get that.
Oh, I'm
I even
sure.
even the most, and believe me, the one thing that I get all the time and is everybody always says to me, like, oh, you don't, what am I going to say? I'm boring. Believe me, I will pull something out of you that you don't even know exists, and I will turn you into the most interesting person in the world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kat had said in the comments when we were talking earlier about like trying to tell stories. She's like, that's me. I really kind of want to learn how to do it, but I don't feel like I have much valuable to tell in quotes, right? Um, and one thing a lot of people, no matter where they're at in their business, a lot of people think like, oh, I'm not, there's that imposter syndrome, or there's
Mhm.
people better than me, but a lot of people that want to learn from you, Kat, or would want to get your value, sometimes they're only one peg below you, right? And those people that are like way up here, the gurus, those people are overwhelming to those people. Like, hey, I don't want to go learn from Russell Brunson before I've ever made a sale. I'm not going to join his 50K mastermind, right? I'm going to, get a couple $100 course. I'm going to go make some sales. I'm going to work up to it, right? I don't want to go work with the king right away. I want to work with the guy who was just in my shoes 6 months ago and figured out and can walk me through the process. So there's
Yeah.
always people, whatever you're doing, your knowledge, your passion, whatever your service is, you're going to be an industry expert by default over 80% of the population, right? You don't have to be that top tier person first and foremost. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. Secondly, you always have a certain demographic. You probably know it better than anybody. The people who's going to relate to you, right? Whether it's women the same age, right? Whether it's the younger generation that likes to follow advice from people that are much wiser than them, right? But you're going to have a certain crowd that's always going to kind of gravitate toward you as well. So if you kind of create your story crafted to them, you're only going to make them more diehard and have them tell more people. So that's a little starting tips I would give you for somebody that thinks they don't have a lot of value. Is there's always a demographic that's going to relate to you and like your stuff, and you're always going to know more in that particular thing than 80% of the population, regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, even with what I do too, right? People can't, like, they come to me, and it can be overwhelming. It can be very daunting to be like, oh man, like it's like 4 months for one project, and it's this much of an investment, and oh boy, I don't know. And we've been able to like reverse engineer the whole thing where it's like we can break everything down. Like, we understand here at my production house that not everybody is going to come in and be like, all right, here, I'm going to give you 100 grand, let's go, let's make this film, right? Like, so we do consulting, we do get people off the ground on pre-production. We do the storyboarding, the storytelling, getting that preparation. And by all means, if you have that, you can definitely go to uh someone else after, and work with somebody within that scope and that range. For those who do have a team, because a lot of people do have a film team already, I've been hired to work on other people's with other people's teams, and just coming in as a director as well. So there's so many ways that I can pull apart what I do, and where you can still get that lefty touch at the end of the day. And I think, and it's interesting because the one thing that really made me smile was a client of mine once said to me, Lefty, you make the impossible possible. And I don't know, that just lit me up like a kid on Christmas morning when I heard that.
That's awesome. I love hearing stuff like that too. That's actually one of my favorite quotes, and I had the poster of Muhammad Ali where he says, "Impossible is nothing." Um, I had that quote forever, right? Everybody says
Amazing.
nothing is impossible. I like it reversed the way Ali said it, "Impossible is nothing," and that one just always stuck with me. And I had that poster for years growing up.
I loved
Um,
it.
but yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, those are some great points too, Kat. You know, what Lefty was just talking about within his skill set and expertise, yours isn't the same. Yours isn't a director and a filmmaker, but whatever yours is, your area of genius, your passion, what you kind of want to create and put out there for content and value in the market, there's also different ways you can extract it. There's little pieces of things you can do, right? You know, you can drop long form content, short form content. You know, there's just all kinds of little ways you can help as well. You know, no matter what you do, I could say this to a consultant, to an agency, to a coach, right? Your core thing could be some 12-week coaching program. Doesn't mean you can't give them the first two phases for 30% of that and get people started. You know, there's all kinds of little things you can do. You know, and then creating little, as you see all of us do, right? You see it out there and everybody clicks on them, but you could, you know, be creating little free PDFs and ebooks and stuff to drop to the market. So
Mm.
there's all kinds of little things of value you can produce as well. A lot of people think like, hey, I'm a coach and I have a 10-week program and that's all I got to talk about and that's all I sell and that's all I can help is people that can do this. But there's
Yeah.
all kinds of other value. What I tell people that have any type of program where they kind of have mapped out their deliverables is like each one of those is its own piece of value and content and topics you could be writing, talking, filming about. And then all those dissect. Usually when anybody, I've worked with so many coaches, clients, and coaches, agencies and consultants, primarily service providers, probably 300 or so high ticket offers I've crafted. And generally there's somewhere between like 9 and 12 pillars, I mean deliverables within their pillars. And people are always like, well, what do I talk about? What I'm like, take any one of those 9 or 12 things and go create a thing about that, a thing about that. And then when somebody kind of gravitates toward it or asks, that actually ties right into your whole offer, right? Like you extracted one piece, they're interested, show them how you can solve that, and then show them how that ties into what else you do. So very similar there. Lefty, another thing I wanted you to touch on, and just I know we talked earlier, and there's certain things you can't talk about, but I know you have an upcoming project coming up with the WWE that you sent me some a pre-recorded video. I think it might even be on your YouTube channel. I'm not sure. Maybe you sent it to me before you posted it, but can you talk a little about that? Whatever you can say. That sounded really, really cool. And you and I kind of vibed a little in Messenger because you're a big wrestling fan as well. So I figured you'd like to talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be working with Neil Haley. He was a former professional wrestler. He got out of that industry, I believe it was 27 or 28 years old, and he's now 51. And he's pretty much going back into the ring to see if he still has what it takes. So I'm there to film that documentary for him. He's going to be reliving a lot of his like glory day matches, and he's also going to give us a lot of insights on the um pretty much on the industry, right? He was very, very close to uh getting into the WWE himself, but uh I don't know that story yet, so I gotta wait. I also have to wait to find out while I'm doing the interview. um but yeah, that's going to be a cool project, and that also landed me um not not necessarily with the WWE per se, but with getting the rights to the story for two former WWE Hall of Famers. Um, right now, like we had in our first call, that's kind of really all I can say.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm hoping that project comes to fruition. It is a larger project, so we are currently looking for executive producers for that film. And yeah, if it ends up coming to light, then that's pretty much what the majority of my, well, maybe not the majority, but part of my 2025, that's what I'll be focusing on.
That'd be awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Last thing I kind of wanted you to sum up really quickly, and then I'm going to see if Kat or Dwayne or Jordan has any questions for you.
Sure.
But like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, I want to come to you and get this film made, and I think like this is the time I want my story told right professionally, and I want it done right. Generally speaking, and again, there's going to be a lot of differences, but what is the big outcome these people are looking for when they come to you? Hey, I'm here now. I want to get this done. What outcome do they want on the other side of that? Or what do they see? Maybe they don't even know what they want, but what happens as a result of that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's the people that are coming to me is they're understanding that they want to make a little bit more of an impact with their content. They also want to produce less
Mm,
while having their content, be those staple pieces to kind of like push their business forward. They also understand that they want to they want to do what the 99% are not willing to do, right? They also have to have, more of a celebrity driven mindset versus like a herd mentality mindset. They want to be able to stand out from what everyone else is doing. On the other front, it's well, kind of like what they want but don't really understand is there are a lot of coaches out there where they're being driven, you know, instant gratification down their throat, right?
yep.
What can you make in the next 7 days? What can you make in the next 30 days, in the next 60 days, even as far as the next 90 days? And then what happens is you kind of put up a wall, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, um, the moment I hit this wall, I can't see further than that. But the ROI that comes or that stems with the films that I do is because they truly are evergreen. They don't have a shelf life. Um, what happens if you share your story of what happened to you in your 30s, 15 years from now? Did it still not happen in your 30s? Absolutely. So the power of the type of films that I create for my clients is that it's about longevity ROI and legacy ROI versus instant gratification. I cannot tell you what you're going to make in the next 30 days off of your film once it's finally produced, but you can kind of foresee what your earning potential is in the next 30 years. And that is the power of what it is that I do. And sometimes it's difficult to break people out of that mindset. And it doesn't mean don't do the daily things that you're doing. Absolutely not, right?
Of
It's
course.
it's like think of a TEDx speaker. You get hired, you get asked to come on stage and talk about your story or your business or whatever. That TEDx speaker is going to forever share that talk that they did for 15, 20, 30 minutes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of like no different than getting a film done or multiple films done of the journey of your business, the journey of your story, the new milestones, the travels, the whatever it is. But instead of making these 15, 30-second forgettables, I'm just making you unforgettable.
For eternity potentially.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the best way to put it. Your documentary will outlive you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you can guarantee. So do you do much with short? Do you have anything? Jordan asked if you kind of what do you have for any advice as a format for like really short form stuff for like reels or shorts? Do you do any of that? Do you have any advice on that, or is that just not kind of your zone of genius of what you do?
You know what? When I first got into the game, when I started working with coaches, I also came into the game uh, in the craze of short form content. Like it was like the hype, the most the the peak of it all, right? And I remember I got hired by a good friend of mine, who was also one of my first mentors, Jay Lee. He goes by the Sales Ninja,
I'm familiar with it.
and
Yeah.
and I did a lot of his content. He still uses the content that I produced for him, like till this day. And we're talking like 2021 ish, 2022. And I remember filming about 10 videos for him. Well, he posted 10 videos. I did more than that, but I remember these 10 videos in particular, and we uploaded them. They were fantastic. They got close to 500,000 views. Poor guy maybe got one discovery call out of that. And it's not that he doesn't know what the heck he's doing, because he is very good at what he does. And at that moment, in the hype of it all, is when I sat back and I was like, dude, this isn't you. Something's not right here. And I immediately was like, we shouldn't do this anymore. We should focus more on storytelling. And at the time, because Alex Hormozy and all these guys were like, short form, short form, short form. Lefty comes in and looks like the village idiot telling people to run the other way, right? And then what ended up happening? Platforms started pulling creator funds. Uh, TikTok started advertising 10-minute videos. Instagram Reels now are giving you up to 3-minute videos. So as you can tell, the pacing of things is getting larger. And it's funny because I wish people saw that when I saw it, but I can't expect them to when there's so many people telling you one thing and other people telling you another. But yeah, to answer the question, yes, I for sure still do short form content. I mean, I still do it for myself. I just don't do it in a way where it's like, hey, my name is Jim, and let me tell you 3 reasons why you need a sales coach, right? Like, I still create them kind of more like movie trailers, and I really still hone in on the storytelling, visual experience for that person's audience.
Gotcha. And kind of a quick, synopsis when you're doing short, do you have any kind of like format? I understand you said like what you don't do, but like, is there any kind of format to what you do, or is it just kind of, subject, changes every single time, like for that specific piece of content?
Yeah, the format does kind of change every single time. Like, the one thing I pride myself on is that when you come to me, you're not getting a cookie cutter solution. So everything is, custom. It is tailor made. It's after, going in there, dissecting what it is that you're already doing and how you're talking, what you want to talk about. Like, all that information kind of comes to me afterwards, versus like, yeah, you're gonna come to me, I'm gonna film with you, here's like 30 fill in the blank templates. That's not something that I do. It's very like tailor made to what message I want to help that business owner get out.
Totally. And one thing I would say, Jordan, from creating some reels and shorts, like, and I play around. Again, I'm no expert by any means. I just test, but I do I'm a data guy. I see what gets more views and what doesn't, and my brain is just picking out why is that one getting more and why isn't that? Because I thought this thing was better, right? But like, what I've realized is kind of like with I don't know, I'm not sure. I think you've been through this stuff, maybe not, Jordan, with my PDOCS stuff. But if you see when we talk about, even written posts and we talk about lead types, so like, what is your hook and what's there in that first 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 seconds? Because that really determines who's watching your content. You either get skipped or not in that first 3 to 5 second window. So what's your lead? What's your open? Is it creating intrigue? Is it humor? Is it like, people were always doing what they call pattern interrupts, right? With just weird faces, like and people play with a lot of things. But what I would say is something that's creating intrigue and somewhat entertaining in the beginning is what's going to help people get through to the full, length of whatever piece of content it is, whether it's 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It really comes down to that lead. So I'd say, depending on what your message is, what lead kind of ties into that would intrigue you if you were to come across it, or that would make you kind of laugh and keep watching. I always think like that too. Like, people are like, well, how should I create stuff? Like, what do you engage with? A lot of times what you engage with is still what your audience can engage with. There's still a formula or a structure on why you watch that, right? So that's just some tips I can give you off the top of my head. But I just play around with stuff because I don't mind like being on camera. So like, I did one the other day. It was funny. It was yesterday or 2 days ago when I was promoting this Lefty. I just went for a walk after our chat. And I started with the camera on my dog, asking my dog a question. Hey, Dora, what is this? And actually, that one got more views than my stories for the previous 7 or 10 days. But the first one I started out talking to my dog, but that's the only difference, right? So I like to just play around with stuff and see what hits.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, it's great that you bring that up because uh, there's been there's been this I don't know if it's something in the air this year or but like things are kind of funny. Things are kind of funny right now, and I mean there's things happening all over the world, of course, that are making certain instances like funny, as I like to call it. But I think I think at some point, as entrepreneurs and as business owners, we stopped having fun. We think we're having fun,
Mhm.
but we're not. We stopped having fun. The content that we once found exciting is kind of becoming a chore. And I'm noticing a lot of it. I'm noticing a
True.
lot of that online where it's like you're getting the same jargon from the same, let's say, 100 people, and it's you don't see the excitement the way that you did 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it's almost like just have fun. Like, who cares about what the end result is? Who cares about what the ROI is? Make the film because you just want to make the film. Like,
Yep.
who cares if it literally just sits in a hard drive for the rest of your life and it never goes anywhere? Even if you did spend a couple grand on it, just do it. Just like we forgot to just have fun, enjoy ourselves, and document and create, simply just to document and create. And I feel like
You're
when
right.
when we can just go back to that, and you could just turn around and be like, hey Lefty, you know what, I'm gonna throw you, I don't know, $1,000 because I just want you to come here and just film some nonsense and just let's have fun for a day. I'm probably gonna have the best time of my life in that in that 24-hour period,
Yep.
you know, because there's there's nothing tied to it. It's just two people enjoying themselves, having a great time. And I feel like a lot of us as entrepreneurs have to get back to that, is just have fun.
Yeah, you said it really good there. You're like, we think we're having fun. I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, and many of my clients, I see this, but they convince themselves they're having fun. Oh, working 10 hours a day is fun. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. No, it's not really fun. You can enjoy your work, but that's different than fun, right?
Yeah.
Like fun is what you do outside of where it should be. At least that's the way I look at it. I enjoy my work. I can't say it's necessarily fun, but I
Yeah.
like what I do totally, right?
Right.
Like, and that's why I always say, as a business owner, people want your expertise as much as they want to also relate to you. That's who they're buying from, right? I've had people
Yeah.
that have been through my webinars and my VSLs and then saw a post of me coaching my daughter's softball game. And that's when they reached out to get on a call. Hey, man, I saw you coaching your daughter's softball game. That really hit. I'd love to talk to you now about what you do in business. So it's like
Nice.
they want to see you as a person as well, doing what you do, right? So
Exactly.
that's why when you guys see my stuff or you scroll through my timeline, there'll be business stuff. There'll be something about this. Then I'll be out with my daughter. I'll be at a concert. I'll be like, it's what it is, right? Like, um, yeah, totally. So I never stop
People
having
buy
fun. But you're
people.
right. A lot of people do, and a lot of people convince themselves they're having fun, and they're creating like forced, unauthentic content because they think it's what people want to see rather than just being themselves.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, it's just, it really just stems down to doing that. Like, just do it. Like, just like, I mean, Nike says it the best. Is like, just do it. Like,
Best slogan
who
ever.
cares? Like leave, just leave all the expectations of what you're about to jump into. Like, just leave it at the door. Like, if if you feel like you want something and you just want to do it to do it, just like, just make it happen. Like,
Those have always been the most rewarding things in my life when I've had no expectation of return. I just did it because I wanted to or whatever, because just to
there
do
you
it.
go. That perfect case study right here, live and direct.
That's true in my business too, though. I put out shit and I've created products with no expectation of return, and it's made me plenty doing it that way. Just provide so
Yeah.
much value to the market that people start to think, damn, if he does all this for free, what's it going to be like if I pay him? Right? You know what
There
I
you
mean?
go.
And so yeah, we got to wrap up. I've already gone a little over, but really quickly, if anybody, I know Jordan and Kat both typed a couple things in. If anyone either wants to unmute really quickly and either ask a question or give a quick little feedback about what you thought of today, that'd be cool. I'll call on you really quickly, either unmute and give me a quick little synopsis, or if you stay muted for a second, I'm just going to think you passed. But Kat, would you like to unmute and either give a takeaway or ask a question? We'll give a 10-second shot clock. Oh, there she is.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Jordan, I know you took something in the chat. Would you like to chime in with any comments or questions or?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Like the best takeaway I got that was around the last part. Like people buy people. It's I'm looking into branding and stuff. That's why I looked into storytelling, and it's what I learned is that people yeah, people by people, and branding is basically it's your reputation, it's your story, it's you as the person, and how I relate to you as a person. And if I relate to you a lot, then it is easier for me to like buy your stuff.
Yeah.
And like for mega companies like Nike and other like large companies, like they touch on so many things that their branding like relates to a lot of people, and that's why um, they connect, and then it's easier to buy.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the takeaway I got. Thanks.
Good
Awesome.
takeaway.
And to touch on that quickly, from a branding perspective, right? It's like I'm I'm a Sony shooter. I love my Sony cameras. Sony is not just going to give me a camera because I'm a good filmmaker, right? Sony is going to look into my morals, my ethics, who I am as a person, right? That's how people get brand deals. It's like you have to align with the individual. It's not what they do, it's
Right.
just who they are as a person. So if if me as a person aligns with the same morals and ethics that Sony has, then they're going to give me the camera. They're not just going to give me the camera because I'm a filmmaker. And I use that as just an example, but like
That's a
it
good
could be
example.
anything. It could be anything. It could be you wanting your favorite coffee, your maybe you want to get your gym membership on the house. Like whatever brand or company that you want to get sponsored from, you guys just have to align in that way, and you'll get anything and everything that you want.
And to the flip side of that, when you're creating your own brand and your own company and your own products, you need to create products and content that's going to align with your ideal audience and your ideal viewership.
That too.
So that's another thing. I always say the one thing in like digital marketing, the kind of secret sauce that I've said this a million times, but I'm working for a lot of these large companies that are selling 10K coaching and consulting packages. Usually they're keeping a little piece of secret sauce like out of that. It's kind of funny how many coaching programs will teach you one thing, but they did this to get you into their business, into their funnel. It's wait a minute, if you're doing this, like, why are you teaching me this, right? So one thing I always think about is think of the sophistication level of your audience when you're creating your stuff as well. I think that gets vastly overlooked. I speak much differently to an entry level market than I do to my peers and my colleagues when it comes to digital marketing. I don't even use the same verbiage. And there's a very specific reason behind that. So, especially when you're creating content to go on social media, right? You have your core like demographic and who you want to attract and who you want to align. What is that sophistication level? Are they early on in the process? Have they been struggling with this? Like, understand that first and then create stuff from there. I think it's just vastly overlooked.
Yeah, no, I mean absolutely. Like there's so much that goes into like who that target audience is and who that perfect client is, that yeah, I think if that gets jumbled up, then you literally are just like grasping at straws. Like you gotta really know like who you're talking to. Like me, for example, it's you're tired of looking like everybody else. You're tired of having to create 50 pieces of content a week. You want to make a little bit more of an impact. You're ready to do the things that the 99% are not willing to do. And this is what I speak about. This is how I speak and create my content for. On
Correct.
top of that, I like to think I share some pretty cool stories and insights. And my goal always is for the stories that I do share within my content to just articulate to somebody else to be like, wow, he really told that very well. I would love to have that. Like I would
Yeah,
like
I
to
wish I
have
could
him
tell it
tell
that
my
good for
story.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so and you don't have to have like a list of like 100 items of like what that perfect client is going to look like or who you're going
No,
to
not at
speak to.
all.
Have like three things, three touch points, and just be like, yeah. The best thing that I did for myself was I I listed 3 things of what I want, and then I listed 3 things of what I don't want.
Mhm.
But people forget to list what they don't want always. And I think if you kind of reverse engineer that and start talking to who you don't want to talk to, you're gonna be like 100 times ahead of the rest of the people in your industry.
That's so true, because I always tell people good content is going to draw on your target market while kind of shying away your non-target demographics. So don't be afraid to push away the people you don't want to be talking to. That's actually better with your content rather than letting everybody in and trying to figure it out later, right? That's just
Exactly.
worse. So I think good content will call in. And that's why, like, when people talk about like their 101 character bio or tagline on Facebook, like, what do I put there? What do I stand out? Like, what I always tell people is for years, everybody did the same formula. And I took a whole day and like did research on this and went through like 50 high, performing coaches and digital providers. And one thing I saw at the time, everyone was doing, I help X do Y in under 90 days without giving up their firstborn child or whatever, right? It was without jumping through flame. And it was always that I help X to
Same
Y,
thing.
insert challenge, and then time frame. So what I did is really quickly in 4 or 5 words, I say what I do, and then I mix in an inside joke that only my market will understand. And it worked really well. And what I mean by that is I had one that worked really, really well for me. Like people would just read my bio and DM me just from reading that. Like that's rare to do. So you have a good bio,
Yeah.
people just read it and like, shit, I need this, right? And
Yeah.
that's when you can kind of tell. But I was just like, it was something along the lines of, I help service-based businesses level up organically without needing a Russell Brunson like ad budget, right? And like my ideal
Yeah.
client gets it. If you don't know who Russell Brunson is, good. I don't want you on my page. You probably like, I only sell to digital marketers and providers. So like by using a category king and making an inside joke that only your market will understand, people that actually gravitate to you kind of already get like what you do. And like, oh shit, like when people would read mine, the comment I get was like, hey man, I want to level up and I don't have a Russell Brunson like ad budget. I'm like, cool, I'm your guy then, right? And like that's how I would
Yeah.
start conversations. So just something to
Right.
think about. So I was trying to speak to my demographic, but also push away people who weren't my demographic by getting that.
Yeah.
Really quickly, Dwayne, did you have a question or anything you would like to add? I didn't give you a chance to speak yet.
No, no questions.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us. Lefty, sorry, I booked this for 45 and we're already a little over an hour. I had a 3 p.m. sharp, so I got to bounce here and cut it short. Really
No
quickly,
problem.
guys, thank you for coming on. I'm going to plug Lefty's YouTube. Everybody go visit it. It's going to be down below in the comments here on Facebook and then in the description on YouTube. Thanks for coming on, my man. And I'll also include your Facebook profile so they can go follow you as well and follow your content there.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, sorry, I got to cut it short here. So